There you go. There you go.
Okay, so hello and welcome. I'm Shanice Horn, editor-in-chief of Don't Blame Char, and today I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to chat with Charlie and Velas, the creative minds behind Blood of Zeus. This series has captivated audiences by reimagining great mythology, blending classic stories with fresh and original storytelling, and with the highly anticipated third season finally on the rise, we're here to dive into the creative process, the emotional arcs of the characters, and what's in store for the final season. So thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Thank you for
Our
having
pleasure.
us. Nice to see you.
So my first question is, what's inspired you to reimagine Greek mythology and Blood of Zeus? And were there any specific myths or characters that you were particularly excited to explore or update for modern audiences?
A part of it, and I think what a lot of people don't realize, critics or even fans, is that it's always just hard to get someone to say yes, to get anyone to do anything in our business. And so we love Greek mythology and we think it's ripe for adaptation and retelling. But to get an executive at a streamer to say yes, you have to find a way to make it feel fresh and put a new spin on it. We don't necessarily feel that's necessary, but that's what you have to do to just get it by the gatekeepers. And so, in a lot of ways, this is just very much a Hercules story that's deconstructed and then built back up in a new way. And so. But you just can't say Hercules. If you say Hercules, they feel it's been there, done that. We've seen a million iterations of that. They're not interested. But if you say, hey, it's about two brothers separated at birth, one's the son of Zeus, the other one's the son of the king, and then instead of in the Hercules story where they become allies, we're going to have them become adversaries, and then kind of throw in a little Oedipus Rex where the one brother kills his mother, not knowing it's his mother. That kind of it's taking those elements. We just feel that all that stuff is ripe for retelling, and it's just about finding a way in, to be honest.
And we always loved Greek mythology. Ever since we were kids, our grandmother would tell us the stories, our mother would tell us the stories. And there was always an excitement and a sense of wonderment and an element of escapism. And it always fascinated us and kind of we just always loved them. And you know, to have an opportunity to tell those stories and to tell them in a unique way, in a way where we basically kind of set the table by saying that this was an oral tradition, and nothing was written down. So maybe one of these tales was lost. Once we postulated that, that allowed us to take all these kind of creative freedoms with the characters that we loved, with the stories that we loved, and we can make it uniquely our own.
Yeah, that's actually really cool that you guys are even saying that in your childhood you also experienced Greek mythology because that's how I first got into Greek mythology with Jackson and all the different classics. And it brings me to my next question. The series blends traditional mythology with original storytelling. How do you balance staying true to the mythological roots while also making room for creative freedom and new twists in the plot?
It's a lot of times mother, is the, necessity is the mother of all invention. And so part of it is what we said is that, okay, we're creating this new story. We're going to say everything that's happened in mythology is part of the backstory. But then one of the things that Netflix was very clear about, because we said, what is the tone? Is it Lord of the Rings? Is it Game of Thrones? Is it 300? And they said it can have the violence and action of 300 in Game of Thrones, but don't get into the sex or nudity of. So keep it more kind of Lord of the Rings. And then once you take that approach, we knew that we wanted to explore, both Heron and Seraphim, and then the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. And when you're trying to adapt Hades and Persephone's story, if you stay true to what was in the mythology, it's definitely very problematic in 2025, that she's kidnapped and then assaulted, and then because Zeus and Hera had such a toxic relationship, we didn't want every relationship to be toxic. So we
Right.
said, well, let's make them more that they truly love each other. And then this myth was just mistold because Demeter never wanted her to marry him.
Right.
And we thought that was a really cool approach to that. So it is a balance, and it's kind of like, well, where can we stay true, or where can we take something that we really love in Greek mythology and plug it in here? Because we have a limited canvas, and it's like, well, what stories can we get in?
Mm. And I also even Wonder if you guys intentionally meant to sort of, because you just mentioned Lord of the Rings, if you also intentionally mentioned like wanted to have references to different forms of media, because I kind of noticed like Lord of the Rings, also something potentially biblical because Seraphim and Heron sort of reminded me of Moses and Pharaoh a little bit, but
Wow, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah, you're influenced by all kinds of things, your upbringing, for one, the things that you read, the movies that you love, the Bible, what have you. Some of the greatest stories come from the Bible. And there, I would even mention Star Wars. There's an element of
yeah.
Star Wars in all of it. And, I think it's also there in your subconscious, and then you write what you love, and that kind of makes its way into the DNA of the story that you're telling. So I think that it's very astute for you to kind of, hone in on that and recognize that. And it wasn't something that we consciously did. Like what we did starting off was that we love, Greek mythology. We love a lot of the main characters in there. And then we looked at Heron, and he was an outsider. And we at times in our life felt like outsiders. So Heron, is the quintessential outsider. So you take kind of what you've experienced, you amplify it, you dramatize it. And then you really kind of hone in on, well, what does this character want? And what are the other characters that inhabit our world want? And then how they go about getting what they want defines their character. And then pits one character against the other. And then once you know your characters, you know them well, the story starts to write itself in some ways.
And
And
there
that's what
are
happened.
lots of references because this isn't live action where you go to a set or you go to a location. And so a lot of times we would give references. There's tons of Zelda Breath of the Wild references, both for locations and action. There's even, I was just talking to someone the other day in episode 305 when Heron's in that drug-induced state and he sees like the evil version of him. We told them that's a callback to the second Zelda, Link to the Past, where Link sees the Dark Link, and so Heron sees like the dark demon version of himself. You could say that maybe even references Star Wars when Luke, is training and he takes off the Vader mask that he's learning in Empire. So, or is that in
Empire,
Return? Yeah,
Empire Strikes Back.
Empire Strikes Back. So all of that stuff feeds, and sometimes we'll say, hey, this is kind of like, hey, the walls in Breath of the Wild when you find one of the Kokoroks, like that's what the labyrinth should feel like. And we would send those references, and the animators would use that as a reference point. So there's definitely things from different popular culture because you're building all of this from the ground up.
And because we're geeks and nerds and we love to read love stories, and we love video games. So all that stuff makes its way into the work.
Yeah, that's actually really cool because I also huge video gamer here. And it's gonna bring me to my next question. I'm glad that we're talking about other media and sort of I would say, arc of being a lone wolf, because my next question is, season three really brings major escalation in terms of stakes and character arcs, especially between Hades and Persephone and Heron and Seraphim. So I would just say if you could further share your thought process behind those evolving relationships and the emotional complexity of their conflicts.
Yeah, we always felt Hades was a character that was misunderstood, and his depiction in modern media was one that we weren't, I would say, fond of. We
Mm,
wanted to kind of give him his due, kind of portray him in a way that felt a little more three-dimensional and a little more true to how we saw his background being. So that was by design, with regards and where we left him off. It's interesting when a character starts off, we go back to one. Everything that he's doing in season two, he's doing it to help his family, for the betterment of his family. And while it's initially a noble endeavor, if you go too far, there is a danger where it can become destructive. It can be turned into something
Even
bad,
if it's justified,
even if it's
you can take it
justified.
too far.
Exactly. And so he did. He took it too far. We all understand where he's coming from. We empathize with him. So we wanted to have a redemptive arc for him in the third season.
mm,
Uh, and that's something that was by design.
He would have to, pay his pound of flesh. But and Kronos definitely puts him through it. But in the end, someone even mentioned the other day online, and this is something philosophy I feel is very important. is that like people usually aren't just heroes or villains. You know, we always say they're protagonists or antagonists, and those roles can shift. If you look at season one, Seraphim and Hera are the main antagonists. Season two, Hades is the main, antagonist in a lot of ways in this conflict on to see who's going to take over the throne, and Seraphim to some degree. And yet by the third season, all of them are working together, like by the very, very end. And we like seeing those kind of shifts and changes over the course of something like a series where you have that time to explore that. So they don't just have to be just one thing the whole way through.
And alliances change, which
Yeah.
is also very cool. We love when we see that in a show or a movie, alliances shifting.
Mhm.
And also in terms of stakes, we felt it was important because people know that, okay, once you die here on Earth, you basically go to the underworld. But we wanted there to be an end all be all, and that is the abyss. And if you're tossed into the abyss, it's game over. You cease to exist. So we felt that was important to really elevate the stakes because now if the gods were, or anyone is to be tossed into the abyss, it's the end all be all. So it gives weight to the entire season and it gives weight to Kronos and what he's doing. So that was another thing.
Yeah, I really like the depth that you guys are speaking about in the series because I think, especially what you were saying about just how, I think it's a great way not to really look at things more so as good and evil, but more so as there's protagonists and antagonists. Because I think that, especially we see that all the time in like Star Wars, and I feel like Dave Filoni has kind of like tried to also put that in sort of like newer Star Wars media. So I really like that that's also present in Blood of Zeus as well, and I wish like more creatives hopefully look at characters and characterization in that way. So I really like that. And also speaking of Kronos, that's my next question. Kronos and the Titans are central to the final season's conflict. What was the creative process, or at least further explaining and bringing these two ancient figures to life, and how did you approach designing them in ways that felt both true to their mythological roots and fresh for the show? And even also just adding the whole idea of protagonist and antagonist versus good versus evil.
It's interesting because all of Greek mythology, truthfully, is like one big soap opera, family soap opera. And we have a lot of infighting amongst the siblings, amongst the Olympians, amongst other characters. And what greater, we always love the story, and what we tried to do is that again, we're bringing in different, we always said, and Voss talks about this all the time, we had a very good creative exec at Netflix the first season. And he said, fundamentally, the show is about Heron and Seraphim, but then all the other gods, that's the spine of the tree, but all the other decorations are the other gods. And so it's about them. But then what we wanted to do is always bring in more God stories, and stories about the gods. And we always loved the story of Kronos swallowing his children. Then basically his mother and his wife kind of tricking him into swallowing the stone, thinking it was Zeus, and then Zeus coming to free his siblings and also take down Kronos. And we said, oh well, that's cool. That's a mythology. We're saying everything in our shows mythology's already happened. Well, why not bring Kronos back? What better adversary? And he's like, listen, there was this prophecy that one of my children would overthrow me. This is what I'm going to do. I'll throw them all into the abyss. They either can join me and become, and be completely loyal to me, or else they're going in the abyss. And we thought that would just be cool and just fit the show. And what we would try and do is always tee up where some of the show would be going the season before with just little flashes of those stories. That's why in 207 we show the story of Kronos swallowing his kids, just so that when he shows up in season three, it feels like it's been weaved into the story.
And to answer the question, with regards to design, like once we have these conversations and we explain to the team, this is who this character is, right away they start envisioning what
Yeah.
he would look like. So he
Mhm.
had to be physically imposing. There had to be a certain kind of strength to him. And I think they did a really good job with those designs and capturing the character. There was a fan that said, with regards to what Kronos was doing. He's like, yeah, those are the actions of a guy that swallows his and eats his kids.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. That's how he would act. That's how that guy acts, you
And
know.
I have to give credit to Jay, our supervising director from season three. He actually did the design for
Yeah, he did a
Kronos.
really cool design.
And so, because kind of what we told him, we said, like, listen, what we want to delineate is that there are these Titans and they're a generation before the Olympians. And so they're older and have more of this primordial feel. And for whatever reason, he kind of landed, he goes, oh, is it kind of like, he said Viking. And we're like, no, no, this is Greek mythology. He's like, no, no, let me show you what I mean. And then he drew it.
It's
And we're like, oh,
cool.
no, that feels good. Like that felt
Feels
right.
right.
Yeah. So sometimes, to be honest,
Mm.
it's just a feeling and you start to see visuals and you say, yeah, that's cool. Lean into that. Or you'll see something like, you know what? That's not what we were thinking. Can you try more of this? But Jay just did that because he just seemed to have an idea for it from get-go. So he did a great, besides being a great supervising director, he came up doing character design. So whenever we were stuck or there was like a squeeze on production and we didn't have time to ask the people that normally do it, Jay would just draw something, and he was almost always had a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool to hear some like the behind the scenes going on with Blood of Zeus. Because I really like even like in addition to being a journalist or just as a fan, I like sort of hearing how, the creative process of the show comes together. So that's really cool and I'm excited to hear that.
Just one quick point, just, our mantra is, and it always has been, best idea wins. We might have an idea for something, and the Chronos one is the perfect one. But if someone else comes in with a better idea, it doesn't matter who it is or where it comes from. As long as it's in the best interest of the story and the characters, we love that. We love that type of feedback, and we embrace that. Best idea wins. It's not about ego. Ego, that needs to get checked at the door, thrown out office.
Absolutely. And going sort of to follow up to the whole idea of like the best idea winning, looking back at the entire series, is there really a particular moment, episode, or just theme that you feel encapsulates what you guys set out for just the legacy of Blood of Zeus? And what's the legacy that you hope viewers, journalists, anyone consuming the media to take away from the show?
I think, for me, one of the moments I'll always remember and I was just proud of is when we were trying to finish season one and we were working out the Heron and Seraphim fight. And we had talked about, oh, at the last moment when, Seraphim grabs him, Heron looks up and his eyes are aglow. And you realize now he's tapped into this power for electricity. I remember the first time seeing it, just being so happy about how well that turned out. That was always a great moment. And then I was always very proud of episode three in season two. I always loved the Hades story. I just thought like, oh,
Mhm.
this like when we were writing it, I'm like, this is gonna be. I even had posted tweets like people asked like when season's two coming out. I was like, this is when we think it's coming out, and look out for episode three. Like
That's
that one we're really proud of, and then
that's
just
your favorite.
yeah, that one just turned out to be a banger, and so that was just really rewarding. And what I hope is they take away is that they're entertained. Like people told these stories around sitting around a campfire to pass the time, to entertain, and to try and understand why the world is the way that it is, and that's what all stories are for.
Yeah, we definitely hope that they're entertained. That, again, as they're watching it, they can forget about the troubles or the adversity they're facing in their life, and it just makes them feel good. And there was a fan from season one that reached out to us and told us, after having seen that first season, she realized that she had pent up anger and that she needed to get rid of that anger. And watching the show helped her do that and just made her life a little bit better. And that really felt good. That was what was, very rewarding. There was another fan, that was battling cancer, and he said, I watched the show and it made me feel good.
I would
And
rewatch the show between chemo treatments, and he's like, it always just gave me something to be, just like, oh
to
my
look forward
God.
to. So like when you hear stories like that, that's what makes it the most rewarding experience. It's that. It's how the fans react. And if you can make someone's life a little bit better, even if you can make them smile a little bit or make them feel better or make them forget about their problems for a little while, for me, that's what's most rewarding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'll even say in my own experience, I know I previously shared that I love sort of the found family trip that happens, but I feel like you guys incorporated sort of the importance of like forgiveness and being able to work through such, I think, harsh, like familial relationships. I feel like in the story of Heron and Seraphim, like Seraphim was kind of like holding on to a lot of things and sort of experiencing, like grief and with his mother and having to really figure where get to a place with Heron where it could be in a much healthier place than they were in season one. And so that's something that I also really took away from the show. So
Thank you for sharing that, and you're spot on. And we believe in forgiveness. We have to, and it's something that we feel, without sounding preachy, that the world needs more of. And listen, we can disagree, and it's okay to disagree. Again, we need to be able to have discourse. Best idea wins, but we also need to be able to forgive each other. Otherwise, we're in big trouble.
And we just said we just want to put some positive messages in there. Like, listen, the show, can be dark and violent and gruesome, but there was always meaning and lessons that were in Greek mythology that you were supposed to learn. In some ways, they were like parables. And so, like, we're like, well, what are we going to do if we're trying to emulate Greek mythology? We have to have messages and ideas in it too. And
Well said.
we love, listen, we love anti-hero stories. We love, gumshoe and noir, but like also the world needs some positivity. Like Vince Gilligan said, like, he's like, I wrote about the biggest villain there is in Breaking Bad. He goes, but maybe I should be writing about heroes. The world needs heroes. And so we try and get a little bit of that in there. You know what I mean? Because it's important.
absolutely. And my final bonus question, do you guys want to drop any upcoming projects, whether it be Greek mythology or just if you guys have any other media that we totally want to support because I think you guys just deserve it. And storytelling and Blood of Zeus, like I want to see
Oh,
you guys have more success in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a dream project that we have, Medusa, and we can't talk about it too much because they want to do a press release when the time comes, but we have some producers attached to that. We feel that that can truly be something that is special, something that is unique, something that can truly be remarkable. And we would love to be able to tell that story. So fingers crossed on that.
Also, we have a comic that'll be out
Yeah.
in heavy metal. The first episode or the first issue of it will be in the July magazine. It's called Ink. We think it's a super cool story that we love. That'll be a 5 episode run of that as a comic, but we love that story. And then, you know,
And that's like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon meets John Wick, in kind of the way we would do it. So it's really rad. It's a really cool, fun story, comic book, and hopefully animated show or even live action show or movie.
yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna be on the lookout to add to my collection and also for our outlet. So yeah, but I want to say thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with me again today.
Oh, it's our
Um,
pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for being
Sorry,
such a
Mace.
great fan, such a
And you're a
good
very good
person.
writer. We read your article. You're a very good writer. Keep
Absolutely.
writing. And I know that world is crazy right now in media, but you have talent. So good luck.
Absolutely.
you. And before you wrap up, is there any final questions or comments you guys want to say at the end of the interview or?
The only other thing I would say is give a shout out to our friend John Stanisi. He's an amazing comic book artist. He's drawn for DC and Marvel, and he has a comic that we're helping produce called Gladiatrix, which was in the relaunch of Heavy Metal. It's currently out in comic book stores now, and he's such a good guy and he's such a talented artist. If anyone's looking for something cool to check out or read, check out Gladiatrix and Heavy Metal.
And he created that with Dan Gordon, who wrote The Hurricane, who's a very, very talented writer.
Right,
And keep your eyes out. There's going to be a press release for Gladiatrix. It's a female gladiator in a really cool world. It is
Yeah.
awesome. Keep your eyes out. You'll be seeing,
More and more stuff
more and more
about
come out, in a press release, hopefully from Cannes, just between us. We'll see. Who knows? And last thing we want to say, we just want to thank you. We want to thank our fans.
Yeah.
The fans were great. their reception. We listen to what they have to say, and the fact that so many of them really love season three, that really made us feel good. And we just want to thank them for being loyal fans and for all the support and love.
And thank them for watching. We had the time of our lives making this show, and we only got to make it because people tuned in. So we're grateful to them, and we're thankful because we feel very lucky to get 3 seasons. We wanted to do 5, but we'll take 3, and thank you.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this again, and I really
of course.
appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Yeah. So have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.